So I just wanted to make a quick video to update people on one of the themes which came through for me today at the Housing, Homelessness and Fair Work Committee, which I sit on along with Councillor Booth from the Green Group. I made some contributions at the committee today which all ended up really along the same theme of equalities. And I just thought it was worth sharing some of the ways in which our work at those committees is time and time again focused on trying to ensure that the council really takes equalities seriously and embeds it in everything that we do. And almost every comment that I made today really came back to the same theme, which was to try to make sure that the council really does take those things seriously in terms of its decision. We had an update about the economic situation in Edinburgh, and one of the comments that was made in that update was that there was an impact for women and people who are aged under 25. And it was good that that had been called out by officers, but I didn't see that there was much of a follow-up to that, so I pressed them to ask, would we be looking further at that analysis of how the economic environment is affecting people who are in minority groups, and to make sure that analysis comes forward to us in our future reports. I was also really concerned that we have had to take a decision to not offer the same number of places for disabled people in an internship programme as we've done in previous years, and so was almost half of the places had to be cancelled this year because of COVID. And while I understand that officers have had to take those decisions for public health reasons, and I completely support the decisions that they've taken, I was pressing them to understand whether that would result in people being effectively left behind, and whether there was anything that we could do to ensure that those places were provided again in future years and that some sort of catch-up was done. And then another report which we looked at in terms of employability services specifically named ethnic minority parents as being a target client group, and yet the two applications that had come forward which specifically targeted ethnic minority parents weren't successful in bidding for funding. And I was very keen again to talk to officers in the committee meeting about why that was and what we could do in the future to ensure that the very specific needs that meant that they had been called out as a target client group would be met in the future if we could work further with minority ethnic people to understand what could the council do differently to ensure that their applications were successful. And then we had a debate, quite a lengthy debate, about how to allocate funding from the Scottish Government to improve local town centres within the city. And I had put forward an amendment which prioritised funding for areas that score very highly on the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation Factors, because again, I think that it's an equalities issue. How we allocate the finite amounts of funding that we get has a very real impact for our residents, and communities that have got less ability to raise funds and that rely on the council to provide funding for any regeneration works have to be something that we prioritise in order to narrow the gap between those who have and those who have not. So it was a pretty stark committee meeting for me, in the sense that I felt like I was a bit of a broken record trying to highlight that equalities was an area where, although a lot of the recommendations in the reports sounded fine on the surface, we were not still really tackling the underlying issues around the inequalities that people face in their lives, often not due to anything that they have necessarily done, but due to their characteristics and the situations in which they find themselves. And as a council, we have to be actively anti-racist. We have to be actively trying to break down the systemic and institutional barriers that are in the way of people reaching their full potential. So yeah, I wanted to share that today was a very good example of that kind of work, and that it is an ongoing battle, and that we fight that fight on a daily basis in the council to try to make sure that people's lives are made better through our decision making.